The room was freezing. Not just cold, sterile, humming, and lit with a violet glow that made everything look bruised. Franklin Rourke blinked hard, trying to focus on the ceiling panels above him. They pulsed with rhythmic lights. He wasn't sure if they were supposed to be therapeutic or just a cruel design choice. A face appeared over him, slate gray skin stretched tight across a narrow, elongated skull. Its deep-set eyes blinked vertically and a metallic badge hung crookedly from its neck. The alien tilted its head and spoke slowly, syllables curling like steam. "You are awake. Do not move. You have sustained significant trauma." Franklin tried to sit up and instantly regretted it. His ribs screamed. His left shoulder flared so sharp he nearly blacked out. He grunted and fell back onto the slab. "Yeah, no kidding." The alien stood still for a moment, hands clasped behind his back. "You were pulled from the debris field of the collapsed corridor. Based on initial scans, you have multiple contusions, 2 fractured ribs, and a dislocated shoulder." Franklin exhaled through his nose. "Sounds about right. I am Dr. Tevril. You are aboard the station Kirellon 12. You were found unconscious during the breach in Quadrant B. We believe a pressure miscalculation triggered the collapse." Franklin's throat felt like sandpaper. "Water!" Tevril stepped aside, returning moments later with a clear cylinder. Franklin took it with his right hand, his only functional arm, and drank carefully. The water tasted metallic, but it helped. "I will begin treatment now," Tevril said, producing a device that looked like a tuning fork mated with a flashlight. "Your injuries are severe. These bruises indicate potential vascular trauma." Franklin glanced down at his torso. His side was awash of purples and blacks, skin stretched tight in places. "That? I've seen worse on the playground." Tevril paused. "You were attacked by children?" "No, I mean, it's just a saying. I got tackled harder playing football in 7th grade." Tevril stared, unmoving. Franklin sighed. "Look, I'm not saying I'm fine. I feel like I got run over by a cement truck. But I'm not dying." "You don't have to treat me like I'm about to pop. You are exhibiting signs of internal swelling." "Yeah, because I got crushed under a 40-pound metal beam. 76 kilograms. Okay, 76 kilograms. Still, I've had worse. Maybe not recently, but bad enough." Tevril leaned in. "You are either incredibly durable or deeply reckless." "Probably both," Franklin muttered and winced as Tevril began scanning his ribs. The medbay door hissed open and a tall woman in a navy blue jumpsuit stepped in. She had short auburn hair and a streak of grease down one cheek. "Franklin," she said, eyes wide. "You're actually awake?" "Hey, Dahlia," Franklin rasped. "You look like hell." Dahlia Venter crossed the room in 3 strides and leaned over the slab. "You look like you went 3 rounds with a freighter engine." "Close. Structural beam 1. Tevril stepped back. "You are familiar with the patient?" Dahlia nodded. "Chief mechanic. He's my crew." Tevril blinked. "He should not be moved for at least 6 human days." "His injuries, I get it," Dahlia interrupted. "But he's not going anywhere. We've got enough to deal with cleaning up the quadrant without dragging broken ribs around." Franklin shifted slightly and grimaced. "You didn't lose anyone, right?" Dahlia shook her head. "Some close calls, but you were the worst off. Lucky you. I always win the prizes." Tevril adjusted the scanner. "You will require immobilization and monitored rest. Our regeneration tech is not compatible with your biology, and human tissue recovery is notably slow." "How long till I can walk?" Franklin asked. "Walking is not advised for at least 72 hours. Your shoulder must be stabilized and your ribs." "Yeah, I got it," Franklin said. "No heroics." Tevril turned to Dahlia. "He is to remain horizontal. Minimal movement. I will return in 1 hour to re-evaluate swelling levels and potential fluid accumulation." Dahlia's expression softened once the doctor left. "You scared the hell out of us." Franklin closed his eyes. "I scared myself. Thought I was gonna suffocate under that beam." "You almost did. I heard someone shouting." "Was that you?" "I was across the hall. You yelled my name before the wall came down. I couldn't get to you until the bots cleared the debris. Franklin tried to nod, winced, and stopped. I remember falling. Then everything went black. You were out for almost 3 hours. He let that sit for a moment, the weight of it heavier than the pressure beam. Well, at least I'm not dead. That's the spirit, Dahlia said, but her voice cracked a little. Don't do that again. No promises. The next 2 days were slow. Franklin remained confined to the slab, monitored by Tevril and 2 assistants who seemed constantly baffled by his condition. Despite the bruises worsening in color, Franklin's vitals stabilized. His shoulder was reset under mild sedation, the pain lancing up his neck and down his spine like fire. Every breath reminded him of the cracked ribs. Tevril monitored fluid levels and swelling with the intensity of someone expecting an imminent medical crisis. You are recovering slower than projected, Tevril said on the 3rd day. Franklin frowned. You said human tissue heals slow. Yes, but your baseline readings suggest prior trauma in the same regions. Your body displays signs of repeated blunt force impacts. Franklin sighed. I worked construction back on Earth. Fell off a roof once. Broke 2 ribs, punctured a lung. I guess the scar tissue's making things worse. Tevril stared at him. You returned to physical labor after pulmonary trauma? Yeah. Took about a month. Had to pay rent. Tevril made a noise that sounded like a modem failing to connect. Your species' disregard for post-traumatic care is astonishing. Franklin managed a dry smile. That's America for you. Later that evening, Dahlia returned with a tablet and a bag of something resembling macaroni. You hungry? If that's food, then yes. She helped him sit up halfway, propping him with cushions. The movement still felt like being punched in the chest, but it was better than nothing. How's the quadrant looking? Still sealed off. We're rerouting power through seed deck. You're officially listed as non-operational personnel for the week. A week. Minimum. Tevril's being generous. Franklin chewed slowly. You ever think we're just not built for this? What? Space? Yeah. We come out here, slap metal together, call it a station. One bad calculation and we're soup. Meanwhile, you've got aliens who think a bruise is a death sentence. Maybe that's the point, Dahlia said. We survive anyway. Franklin looked down at his chest. The bruises were still ugly, but the swelling had gone down. Yeah, I guess we do. By day 5, Franklin was able to stand with help. Walking was slow. Breathing hurt, but not enough to stop him. Tevril remained a constant presence, scanning, documenting, and occasionally muttering about unpredictable organic resilience. You should not be mobile yet, Tevril said as Franklin shuffled from the medbay to the corridor with Dahlia's support. I'm not running laps. Just stretching my legs. Tevril held up a readout. Your skeletal readings indicate partial healing. But if you fall, I'm not gonna fall. Dahlia steadied his arm. We've got him. Tevril sighed, a sound like wind through reeds. Humans are statistically inconvenient. We get that a lot, Franklin said. By the end of the 2nd week, Franklin was back on light duty. He couldn't lift anything heavy and bending too far still made him dizzy, but he was mobile. He returned to the maintenance bay, mostly supervising while Dahlia and the team repaired torn conduits and rewired power junctions. One afternoon, Tevril visited him outside the repair hub. I have reviewed your medical history in full, the doctor said. You have survived numerous injuries that would disable most species permanently. Lucky genes, Franklin replied. No. Adaptation. Your species' threshold for trauma is remarkable. Franklin leaned against the wall. We don't have scales or exosuits. We've just got bone and grit. You learn to work with what you've got. Tevril's gaze narrowed. You dismissed your injuries as minor. Yet they were not. Why? Franklin looked at him. Because if I let myself think I was broken, I'd act like it. Sometimes you have to lie to your body to get through the day. Tevril didn't respond for a long time. Then he nodded once. I underestimated you. Join the club. 3 weeks after the collapse, Franklin was cleared for full duty. The bruises had faded to yellow and green. His ribs still ached when he laughed too hard, but the shoulder was stable. Back in the service corridor, inspecting a new pressure valve, Dahlia glanced at him. You know, I still can't believe you said that to Tevril. Said what? The playground line. Franklin grinned. It was true. Dahlia rolled her eyes. You're never gonna let that go, are you? Probably not. She nudged him gently. Just don't make a habit of nearly dying. It throws off our schedule. Franklin looked at the sealed-off quadrant, now patched and gleaming with new alloy. No promises, he said. But I'll try. Franklin leaned against the inner bulkhead of the atmospheric control chamber. One hand braced near a junction box still warm from recent recalibration. His breath steamed faintly in the cool air. The station's temperature regulators were still temperamental since the collapse, and the engineers had started calling the cold spots Tevril zones whenever the doctor lingered too long in one area. He wasn't supposed to be here, at least not officially, but no one had stopped him when he wandered in. Dahlia was in the next corridor doing diagnostics on a filtration relay, and he'd said he needed to make sure the thermal sensors weren't lying. That had been 22 minutes ago. The chamber door opened with a hiss. Tevril entered alone, his posture unusually rigid, even for someone whose idea of recreation probably involved listing species with redundant livers. He didn't immediately speak, just studied Franklin's posture. You have exceeded your physical activity allotment for today. Again. Franklin rubbed his right forearm, which had started to ache after adjusting a misaligned duct. I'm just checking the venting behavior on the tertiary ducts. They were throwing off the pressure curves last time we ran a full cycle. There are over 24 qualified technicians aboard this station. You are not currently listed among them. I'm not lifting anything heavier than a wrench, he said. Unless you count my own disappointment in the thermal design of this place. Tevril closed the distance and produced a narrow probe from within his coat. Extend your arm. I wish to scan vascular strain levels. You know, you could just say, I want to make sure you didn't pop a vein. I do not trivialize circulatory stress. Franklin sighed and held out his arm. The probe hummed faintly against his skin. You're not going to find any ticking time bombs. I've been careful. Tevril rotated the probe, eyebrows lifting slightly. Your brachial flow velocity has increased since yesterday. Slightly elevated pulse. Elevated sodium levels. You consumed dehydrated meat rations? I had half a package of the spice jerky. It's not a crime. That food unit contains 400 milligrams of sodium per strip. It was that or the protein gel that smells like wet socks. Tevril stored the probe. You should not be standing for extended periods. Your musculoskeletal readings are still not optimal. Franklin lowered his arm. Is this about the bruising again? No. That has resolved. Mostly. But your shoulder joint remains incompletely stabilized. And you are compensating by twisting your lumbar spine. I'm walking like a busted shopping cart. I know. Tevril folded his hands behind his back, eyes fixed on him. You persist in engaging systems beyond your recovery thresholds. Why? Because things still need fixing. And because sitting around makes it worse. You believe inactivity is detrimental to healing? I believe if I stop moving, I'll feel every damn fracture all over again. I'd rather keep ahead of it. Tevril was silent for a moment. Your species frequently prioritizes function over recovery. We prioritize momentum, Franklin said. Stopping means rethinking. Sometimes that's more painful. Tevril's eyes narrowed. That is illogical. Welcome to humanity. Behind them, the far wall's condensation unit clicked twice and cycled into a quieter hum. Franklin exhaled, the cold air tightening his ribs again. He shifted, trying to find a position that didn't jab at his lower back. Sit, Tevril commanded, gesturing to a low-supply crate. Franklin hesitated, then eased himself down. You're gonna tell me I'm being stubborn. I was going to ask if your vertebrae experienced trauma during the collapse. You are favoring your left side. Franklin rolled his neck. I landed hard. There was a lot of torque when the beam hit. Figured it was muscle. Tevril knelt beside him, producing a different instrument. Hold still. The scanner passed slowly over Franklin's lower back, emitting a faint series of chirps. 3 of your lumbar discs are displaying compression artifacts. One has a minor bulge pressing against the nerve sheath. Franklin blinked. That would explain why my toes keep going numb. You failed to mention this symptom. I thought it was the boots. Tevril straightened. You require spinal decompression therapy. Immediately. You mean one of those traction tables? No. I mean atmospheric suspension in a zero-pressure field. Franklin winced as he shifted again. That sounds expensive. It is not a question of cost. It is a question of nerve preservation. Continued compression may result in permanent deficit. Can I still walk in the meantime? You should not walk at all. Noted, Franklin said, not moving. Tevril stared at him. You are resisting again. I'm deciding how much of this is going to scare Dahlia if she finds out. At this point, I would expect her to be unsurprised. Franklin smiled faintly. She'd probably just hand me another wrench and tell me to fix myself. Tevril stood. I will prepare the suspension chamber. You will report there within 2 hours. Franklin hesitated. Will I be able to move afterward? If the therapy is successful, yes. If not, we may need to consider invasive intervention. That's a comforting phrase. Tevril turned toward the door. I will notify the medical bay. If you are not present within the appointed window, I will have you collected. Understood. Tevril paused at the threshold. You joke often when confronting serious medical concerns. Is this also cultural? Sometimes it's the only thing that gets us through. Tevril tilted his head. I will study that further. Franklin watched the door close behind him, then leaned forward and rubbed the base of his spine. The numbness in his toes was spreading again. He'd hoped it would fade with time, like everything else. But some pain didn't dilute, it just settled in and made itself comfortable. He stood slowly, using the edge of the crate for leverage. The room tilted for a moment, then stabilized. He exhaled and made his way out, each step measured. 2 hours later, he floated in the center of a transparent chamber, limbs suspended in a field that felt like thick air. Tevril stood at the control panel, flanked by a technician with silvery skin and 4 eyes. Neither looked particularly thrilled to be working with a patient who'd spent the last week pretending he was fine. Do not attempt to speak, Tevril said without looking up. The field dampens vocal vibrations. Movement is restricted. Breathe normally. Franklin mouthed something that could have been define normal, then closed his eyes and tried to focus on the rhythmic pulse of the chamber's energy field. Time passed in strange pulses. His body felt weightless, but his spine pulsed with heat as the field adjusted pressure and spacing between each vertebra. He felt bubbles of sensation tingling, then relief, then dull ache. His toes twitched once, then again, then steadied. After what might have been 30 minutes or maybe an hour, the field powered down gradually. Tevril approached and tapped a console. Remain still for 3 minutes. Your neurovascular pathways are recalibrating. Franklin floated, fingers drifting, eyes half-lidded. Then gravity returned, gentle but firm, drawing him down to the padded platform beneath the chamber. He landed with a soft thump. Tevril scanned him again. Initial results are promising. You will require 2 additional sessions. Franklin sat up slowly. I can feel my feet again. That is a baseline expectation, not a milestone. It feels like a milestone to me. Tevril handed him a flexible support brace. Wear this when upright. It will reduce spinal strain and stabilize your posture. Franklin examined it. Looks like something out of a science fiction movie. Tevril didn't respond. They walked back toward the corridor in silence. Franklin adjusted the brace with one hand, the other brushing against the wall to steady himself. Just before they reached the interchange point, Tevril stopped. Your resilience remains statistically improbable. Franklin glanced at him. You mean I should be worse off? You should be immobile, possibly experiencing neuropathic failure. Instead, you are ambulatory, communicative, and exhibiting measurable improvement. Guess I'm just too stubborn to break. Tevril blinked slowly. Your species is either uniquely adapted or catastrophically reckless. Probably both, Franklin said. But we get the job done. Tevril turned and walked away. Franklin leaned against the wall, flexed his toes, and smiled. This time, it didn't hurt. Franklin adjusted the brace under his shirt and stepped into the hydrothermal maintenance alcove. The room was narrow, built for utility, not comfort, just enough space to service the humidity regulators and access the main vapor condensers. Condensation clung to the walls in slow, deliberate rivulets. The air was warm, bordering on damp, and carried a faint trace of mineralization. Inside, crouched beside the base of the intake manifold, was a scolari technician with 3 jointed arms working in tandem. Its translucent skin shimmered with faint iridescence, and its eye stalks tracked Franklin as he entered. "You are the human with the soft skeleton," the scolari said without looking away from its task. "Depends how you define soft," Franklin replied, crouching beside it with a slow, practiced motion. "Name's Franklin. You. I am Yither. You are not cleared for full mechanical rotation. Your spinal axis remains vulnerable. I'm not here for the heavy work. Just diagnostics. Dahlia said you needed help interpreting the old Earth systems we patched in." Yither paused. "The interface you provided lacks logical configuration. It uses inconsistent voltage tolerances. That's because it's not supposed to be here. We spliced it from a planetary greenhouse system that ran on converted solar arrays. It was built to adapt, not to behave." Yither rotated one of its arms and retracted the casing of the fluid intake. "That explains the oscillating pressure. The system behaves as if it expects wind." Franklin tapped a finger against the control panel. "Yeah, it's got a feedback loop that mimics early storm compensation. You need to lock the cycle at baseline humidity and then ignore the first calibration reading. It'll lie to you." Yither emitted a low warble. "Fascinating. Your technology assumes imperfection. We assume chaos, really? Then we build around it." Yither watched him for a long moment. "You were limping. Noticed that, did you? Your gait favors the right, compensating for spinal discomfort. Has Tevril recalibrated your support brace?" Franklin leaned against the wall. "He will. I've got another session tomorrow. The zero-pressure field's helping." Yither extended a scanning coil toward the panel. "Your endurance is atypical. Your structure lacks reinforcement, yet you persist. Rebar's expensive. Grit's cheaper. That is not medically sound." "No, but it's how I got through drywalling 3 floors with a cracked pelvis." Yither's eye stalks shifted slightly. "That phrase may require elaboration. I fell through an attic during a renovation gig. Landed on the 2nd floor. Broke part of my hip. Didn't have insurance, so I kept working. Took me 6 weeks to walk straight again." "You performed heavy labor with pelvic damage?" "I needed rent and groceries. The body complains, but it also adjusts if you give it a reason to." Yither made a quiet clicking noise. "You are not unique among humans in this?" "Not particularly. We're a stubborn species. There's a term in your maintenance logs, jury rig. It appears frequently." "Oh, that just means we fixed it using whatever was lying around. Usually not pretty, but it works." Yither nodded slowly. "A philosophy of function over elegance." "Exactly. I repaired the vapor seal using a spoon." Franklin blinked. "What kind of spoon?" "The long one from the nutrient chamber." "Well," Franklin said, grinning, "you've officially earned honorary human status." Yither's luminescence pulsed a faint green. "I will document this." They finished recalibrating the intake manifold together, making minor adjustments until the pressure stabilized. Franklin showed Yither how to override the false readings manually. Afterward, they ran a diagnostic cycle and watched as the humidity levels flattened, no longer fluctuating erratically. Later, in the corridor, Franklin leaned against the wall and stretched carefully, feeling the tension in his lower back ease slightly. Yither remained beside him, holding a data pad. "Your skeletal readings are abnormal by our standards," Yither said, "but your systems compensate in ways we do not fully understand. That's because we're not built to last. We're built to recover." A distinction I am beginning to appreciate. Dahlia rounded the corner, wiping her hands on a thermal cloth. "Frank, you were supposed to be in diagnostics, not crouched under a hydro unit." "Didn't crouch. I knelt gracefully." "Your version of graceful involves a groan and a wince." Franklin shrugged. "Still got the job done." Dahlia eyed him, then turned to Yither. "He didn't try to lift anything, did he?" No. He provided verbal guidance and minor interface adjustments. And several analogies involving livestock. Sounds about right. Franklin straightened slowly. I'm heading to Mebe after this. Tevril gets twitchy if I miss a session. Dahlia nodded. He sent me a notice. Said if you skipped again, he'd report you as structurally delinquent. I think that's alien for troublemaker. Or liability. Franklin started toward the lift. Either way, I'll be horizontal in a minute. At Mebe, Tevril was already waiting, arms folded, eyes narrowed. The chamber was dimmer than usual, the ambient lighting adjusted to reduce visual strain. Franklin slid into the suspension chamber without argument. After the session, as he sat up and flexed his hands, Tevril stood beside him. Your spinal response is improving. The nerve sheath compression has reduced by 20%. You will require one final session. I can already feel the difference. No more tingling in the toes. Good. You may resume limited rotation and light lifting within 72 hours. Franklin glanced at the brace on the bench. Still need this. For now. It supports your behavioral patterns. You mean I move like an idiot? I mean you move as if your body is indestructible. Franklin laughed, then winced. Still not quite there yet. Tevril handed him a small container. This contains a topical agent. It will reduce inflammation in your lower vertebrae. Apply it twice daily. Franklin took it and turned it over in his hands. Thanks. Tevril studied him. You have not inquired about long-term effects. Most patients request projections. I figured you'd tell me if I was going to fall apart. You will not. Your healing trajectory is within acceptable bounds. But your body retains signs of cumulative damage. I've lived a hard life. It shows. Franklin stood, slower this time but without bracing against the wall. You know, you were right about one thing. Tevril tilted his head. I do downplay everything. Not because I think I'm invincible, but because if I admit how bad it is, I might stop trying. Tevril was quiet for a moment. Then perhaps your species' resilience is not merely physical. Franklin slipped the brace under his arm. We've been cracked, burned, buried, and lost. And we keep going. Not because we heal quickly, but because we don't wait to be fully healed before we move. Tevril nodded. Then I will revise your chart. Functionally stubborn. Prognosis, active. Franklin grinned. Sounds about right. He left the medbay walking straighter than he had in weeks. The corridor lights flickered once as the station adjusted power loads, and somewhere in the distance a cooling system hummed back to life. Yither met him at the junction with a folded schematic tucked under one arm. I have reconfigured the intake protocols per your suggestions. The pressure curves are stable. Good. That means the vents won't rain on the food processors again. Your assistance was valuable, and your biological anomalies remain of interest. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. They walked in companionable silence past the observation deck, where the stars hung quiet and distant beyond the reinforced glass. You know, Franklin said, I think I'm officially out of bruises. Perhaps. But your species appears to collect new injuries as a form of recreation. He laughed, then winced again but less than before. That's the human condition, he said. Always one misstep from a story we'll tell later. Yither paused. You should document these stories. They're better when told face to face. Together, they continued down the corridor, the station humming steadily around them, patched systems holding, and no alarms in earshot for once. It was, by any measure, a good day.